Happy to see you. Thank you for
Yes,
wanting to be here with us today.
pleasure.
And thank you for joining in and welcome everybody. Uh, this is the last event at LACSAM this year. And I thought it would be nice to have a year-end Vajrasattva purification and maybe start out with Venerable, just talking about the purpose and necessity for leading our Vajrasattva practice, doing a practice every day, and giving some time for Q&A. And then after 1 hour, maybe, then upon the Venerables leaving, then we will do a few extended prayers and chanting the names of Manjushri. So I will just hand over the words to you, Venerable, for an hour, and you can take away about Vajrasattva practice and then lead. Is that okay?
Sounds good. But why don't you offer a mandala to request the teachings last? That's
Yes.
auspicious. Yeah.
Yes, we will do. We will do.
Good, good, good. Okay, you start. That's great. I'm ready to go.
I'll be right there in a minute. Here we
So
are.
so as always, it's always good to remember what we're doing. It's all we can sing all these nice prayers, but if we don't know the meaning, it's rather silly. So what Lars is doing on behalf of Laksam and all the people there is going to request the teachings. And so to do that, we offer a mandala, offer the contents of the universe. If we know the Tibetan or the Buddhist cosmological view, that's fine. If not, just imagine all the marvelous things of the world that people use that make us happy, all the objects of the senses, and pile them all up and imagine offering as a request for the teachings. And so last we'll just sing the short prayer that is this, is the meaning of that. So just have that in your mind as you sing, or just say the words, visualizing as big as you can all the objects of the senses, offering to the Buddhas, happily requesting the teaching.
Thank you. Sashi perki yukcheng meto tramri raplingji nihire gyan padi sange shingdu mekche ulwagi rukunam da shingla jepaksho jetsu lama dampakena kiche kikala Quien se tu trin tri, di cha sampe dulce sin mala, sap kie tu ki cha pa, bab tu so, idam guru ratna mandala kamni atayami. Yes, thank you, Venerable.
So it's good if you show the words of the prayer. You took it off.
The prayer?
The one you had it ready, and then you took it off. Here you go. So we think these words, it's important we think the meaning. It's important. So we're thinking, the first two lines, we're reminding ourselves of our reliance on the Buddha and his teachings, which includes these practices that we like to do. That strengthens our connection with the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, saying those words. And the second two lines are our motivation, the key factor, that our reason for being here, so let's make it as big as possible, our motivation, our reason, our purpose. And we think of it as we want to develop our marvelous potential, so we can be a benefit to others all the way to leading them to enlightenment. That's the biggest, you can't get bigger than that. That's this attitude of bodhicitta. So we thinking, have this attitude in our minds when we say these words. So we first say them in English. I mean, I said that's even what I've just said now is already one recitation in my own words. So we say a second time in English, and the third time we can chant it in Tibetan. So we're saying, I take refuge and I'm enlightened until in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Sangha. And then by the merits of, no, not generosity, it's the other prayer, but we'll, if you have it, you know the one where it says, by the merits of listening to these teachings. It's the one you say before the teachings, but we can have that one. We just change the words. Don't worry, Lars. It just told me that it sounds like I've switched to a different language. I'm so sorry, my language doesn't sound like English. I just got a message. It sounds like you might have switched to a different language. Please update it. That's very funny, isn't it? They can't recognize my fast Australian. Oh my dear. Save. No, leave it like it is. Okay, that's very funny. I've never had that message before. So yeah, so in the third line, as you can see, the typical prayer is by the merits of generosity and so forth. That means the 6 perfections. But here, instead of jinsog, we say chö nien, which means by the merits of listening to these teachings. So we just put in English the second time, by the merits of listening to these teachings, may I become a Buddha to benefit sentient beings. Now the third time we'll say it in Tibetan, and we'll put those different words in, chö nien instead of jinsog. Sangye chedang soke chognam la jangchu baru dagi kyapsu chi dagi chönyen gipa sonam ki drola penche sangye drola show. That's it. That's it. That's all. One time my own words, second time the words there, third time Tibetan. That's good enough. Good enough. Good enough. Okay. So, okay, people. Just say hello to everybody who's here. All these people, happy to see you all. Smiling faces, those that I can see, and assuming there's a smiling face for those that I can't see, or not smiling, as you wish. That's okay. So here we are on, what is it, December the 30th. Got another year gone like a dream, isn't it? And it's like a second ago we said December 30th, 2022. And a second before that it was December 30th, like 1920 or something. It goes very quickly. So, okay. So as we know, the Buddhist view, the fundamental Buddhist view is that our mind never stops, morning, noon, and night. It goes back to beginning as time and will continue on. And everything it doesn't say, everything that goes on in it, it's very simple, actually. It's not complicated. Everything that goes in our mind, not our brain, our consciousness, our thoughts, our feelings, our emotions, unconscious, subconscious, everything that goes on there programs that mind. I really think Buddha would have liked that concept. He used the analogy of seeds and fruits all the time, which is a brilliant one. Leaves seeds in the mind that ripen in the future as our experiences. Here we program our mind. So I always point this out, and I think it's always important to remember it because we know it so well. We know about this because when we play piano, when we practice music, when we practice cooking, we're programming our mind with that knowledge. And we're never surprised that it ends up making you a good cook and a good musician. But we don't know that. And this is a very simple point. We don't know it's the same process when it comes to being a happy person or a suffering person. We just don't know that. We think the outside world is the main reason for me being happy or suffering. We put all the emphasis on the outside. That's like if you're a musician, you pay all the attention to the piano teacher and to the piano, and that you don't think that you play any role at all. That's how demented it is, but that's what we think. As Lama Zopa says, the vast majority of all humans on this planet have absolutely no idea that what goes on in their mind plays any role at all in terms of their life, their happiness and suffering. And it's quite shocking to hear it. When we analyze our own behavior and we observe the world, we can see this is exactly true. And it's kind of demented, it's kind of crazy. So given that everything we think and do and say programs our mind, and then very simply programs us with the tendency, programs us with virtue and goodness, and thus happiness in the future, or programs us with neuroses and misery, which produces much suffering in the future. Given that, then the next step, given that I don't want suffering, I don't want neuroses, I don't want unhappy lives and unhappy experiences, I don't want that. So given that, then it follows we'd better learn to, sort out what's going on in our mind. And there's 2 different levels of practice. The first is related to karma, just at least you stop doing certain actions with your body and speech. But then you do the really subtle job of changing the mind itself. This is the job of being a Buddhist, basically. That's the job of being a Buddhist. It's very simple. So here you've asked me to discuss the first one, which of course it brings in the mind, but karma and vows and all these things, they're really mainly dealing with behavior. And I think this is something that's curious in our culture. We know we have bodies and speeches, and we know we have a mind, or maybe we don't know, but we tend to think of ourselves as one big lump, But the Buddhist view, as you can see it, there's a very big distinction in terms of practice as well in relation to body, speech, and mind. Mind is the most subtle. Mind is the most important. But body and speech do the work of the mind. The body and speech create the harm. and the body and speech create the good. So we have to first harness the energy of them first. And that's where purification comes in. It also affects the mind, there's no question. Of course it does. So it's practical psychology. So given, too, which all a bit overwhelms us, that our mind did not begin in our mother's womb, and that it doesn't come from mummy and daddy, it doesn't come from a creator, it can't come from nothing, it can't just, boom, appear out of nowhere with no past, can't do that. So the only logical option, the only final option, which doesn't occur to us, I mean, we only think you either come from mummy and daddy or God, one or the other, isn't it? Both posit a past. One posits the past being God, and the other posits the past being your mummy and daddy and grandma and grandpa, isn't it? And back to the monkeys. That's not Buddha's view. The body, yeah, sure. But your mind, it's got its own past. This is the part that's unique to the Buddha. And in a way, we really struggle with this because we're so familiar with the materialist view, with the neuroscientific view, with that view, you know. So it's hard for us to get our head around this idea that my consciousness, my mind, which means my tendencies, which means my goodness and my badness, and my being good at football or music, these tendencies, these habits, that they're mine. I brought them with me when my mind ran like a magnet at the time of conception to my mother's fallopian tube or wherever it went, you know. That's a big shock to us. But if you think of it intellectually, it's not complicated. Just have to posit it, the possibility, if we're trying to be Buddhist, you know. Eventually, we'll prove it to be true or not when we get single point of concentration, no problem. But until then, we're taking it as our hypothesis. And this is actually a massive point, because if we, without thinking, when we have a problem or we have some good thing happen, we tend to look outside for why it happened. And then we tend to look outside also for why I'm angry or why I'm happy. You know, so we assume we're happy because someone said something nice. And then we assume some, you know, when I'm suffering, that it's something bad out there happens. So we're always focusing on the outside. And then indeed we look into the past, but usually our childhood past and our mother and all those things. But the Buddha says, sure, look into the past, but your own past, which is held in your mind. So as for how it really works, it's incredibly sophisticated. And as His Holiness said one time in one commentary on Mahamudra, it's easy to talk about the mind. We can do that. We must. But to actually know directly your own mind is a pretty powerful thing. Because mind doesn't, it's not subtle. It's not physical. It's not physical. And that is very abstract for us. You know? And that's where these amazing techniques coming in from these genius Indians, you know, from thousands of years ago, come to play. They just develop these brilliant skills that enable us to go into the subtlety of our own mind, way beyond the grosser level of conceptuality, way beyond the sensory, way beyond our usual memory of things, you know, to a more subtle level that we absolutely do not posit as even existing in the modern views. So it's a pretty amazing system. And all this knowledge about the mind that Buddha talks about is coming not from the sky, not from speculation, but from his own direct experience. That's the point, you know. So it's very encouraging to know. And of course, when we remember, this is where it's so important to hear the teachings about mind. And this is where, especially in the Mahamudra teachings, it's very blissful. I mean, if you really try to emphasize such a lot for us crazy self-piteous Westerners, you know, to talk about the potential of our mind. It's very encouraging because then no matter how much garbage you see in it, you know it's not your real nature. We need to know that. And that's our tragedy. Whatever arises in our mind, we believe it's our real nature, you know. It's so tragic. So our mind, you know, this is the mind. The mind is naturally. So these are all lovely words. We have to hear them. Wonderful things about the mind. Yes, he talks about it. You know, so sweet how he talks. So one thing about the mind is, and this is the fundamental point about purification and about Buddhahood. And again, intellectually, it's not that complicated, but we have to really think it through carefully. That delusions in the mind. This gross, see, we have gross level of cognition. The mind, its job, the mind is that which is, the definition of mind is that which is clear or luminous, meaning not physical, basically. And then second, it's that which cognizes. That's the job of the mind. The job of your mind is to cognize, or is to know, or is to be aware. That's the job it does. So finally, Buddha has found a method for us to cognize that which exists, meaning reality, meaning what is true. And right now he's saying that all the neuroses in our mind, all this at a grosser level, all these gross misconceptions, these emotional afflictions called ego grasping and attachment and anger and all the others, that these at the grossest level are conceptual, the stories about things, and that they are fantasies. They're made up. They're made up stories. They don't have a basis in reality. And that's a very abstract concept to us. When we hear that anger is a misconception that has no basis in reality, we're very confused, because it was evident to everybody that your boyfriend did punch you in the nose. So how can you say it's not true? Well, no, Buddha's not saying the punch isn't true. Buddha's saying the conception called anger, with all that emotion, is a conceptual story that exaggerates the badness of the boyfriend. So in that sense, it's a misconception. He's not saying there was no punch at a relative level. There was. So all the delusions, they exaggerate, they distort, they embellish, they decorate, as Lama says. So it's in that sense, they have no basis in reality. It's like you see you got $50, but you're 50 euros, but you or 50, whatever you have in Switzerland. Where are you now? What country are you in? You're in what country?
Switzerland.
I forget. Yeah, so I forget you have Swiss francs. That's right. So if you see 50 francs, but you for so long have believed that it's 500, you've projected a fancy onto it, a fantasy. You've decorated on top of the 50, 500. You've embellished it. This is exactly what delusions do. But because you've done it for so long, this is the scary part, that note now 50 appears to you as 500. Appears to you as a reflection of your fantasy. That's how the delusions work. So what Buddha's saying is, these delusions, he is saying we can remove all neuroses from the mind. That's a really nice, simple statement, but it's a very bizarre statement. If you say that to a neuroscientist, he'll think you're mentally ill. Because what you're suggesting, because he assumes the mind is the brain, he's suggesting you have to cut out all those pieces of the brain. That's the only way you can handle okay, now with neuroplasticity, they're starting to see that we can change the brain. So that's pretty good. But the Buddha's not talking about the brain. He's talking about the actual cognitive process itself, the actual subjective cognitive process of our cognition every second working away. And he's identified that the neurotic states of mind, the ones that are rooted in a fantasy me, are deeply rooted in fear and panic and misery in their nature, because they're misconceptions, that they are not at the core of our being. This is the fundamental point that Buddha is making, that therefore they can be utterly removed. Those misconceptions. That is finally what Buddhahood is. When you combine that with the perfecting of all the goodness in the mind, the perfecting of all the virtues, which are at the core of our being, speaking simply, when you've perfected your virtues and rid the mind of delusions, that's Buddha. And Buddha says, the Mahayana says, that's our true nature. It's not as if we've been it before and have lost it. No, but that always is what defines our very being. That's pretty intense. That's pretty delicious. When we can remember that and see the logic of it, not just cross your fingers and think it sounds like a nice idea. Understand it logically. It's very, very encouraging. So then with that view, the idea of purification is an incredibly delicious practice. You're so happy to do it. It's like the dirt in your T-shirt is not completely oneness with the cotton. So when you know that, you're happy to keep popping it in the washing machine, happy to see the dirt coming out, because you know that you're now getting to the true nature of the T-shirt, the pure white cotton. It's encouraging. You know, whereas we think, oh, I'm naturally bad, I'm naturally hopeless. No matter how much purification I do, I'm still bad. We don't get kind of excited. You know, we're not we kind of to drag. So we have to know this fundamental teaching in Buddhism. We have to know it because it's the basis of all the teachings, all the practice. It's the basis, the absolute basis. The delusions are adventitious. They're not at the core of our being. They are not at the, they're not oneness with our mind. To have some confidence in this, even theoretically, is incredibly delicious, I tell you. Why? Is because we believe that dirt is oneness with the cotton. We believe that our mind is oneness with anger and jealousy and depression. This is the tragedy. I mean, just recently, a friend emailed and said he's got another guy on Facebook, one of his friends who's completely crazy, and he's completely just has these terrible voices in his head, and it's completely convinced it's all true. And he just Facebooked again. He said he's bought a gun and he's waiting for the time. And he feels he's now killed himself because he believes every word in his head. This is what makes us all insane on this planet. This is an utter, utter, utter tragedy, I tell you. So to have even confidence, even in the intellectual certainty. So let's look at why then that's true. How is it that delusions can be removed from the mind? Well, the only way to understand that is when you understand that a delusion is a misconception. They're at the gross level of you see, we have different levels of mind. You've got to take this into consideration as well. When you got single point of concentration, this brilliant technique these Indians invented 3,000 years ago, more. I don't know when exactly. What they learned to do was completely subdue the conceptuality and the sensory, which is the gross level, which is the only level neuroscience posits pretty much, and is the only level we ever experience pretty much. So they found this technique that enables you to completely subdue the grosser level and go the subtle levels, the subtler levels of your own capacity for cognition, your own mind. And I mean, Lama Deshi talks about it in Mahamudra, and it just sounds like science fiction. The way he talks about how the mind, just the experience of your own mind, when you've got some concentration to these levels, it's like inconceivable. It's so inspiring. I'll read you from Lama's words. It's just so inspiring to hear it. Don't hear it like religion. Don't hear it like science fiction. Hear it as real. Let me find Lama's book. So inspiring. Lama tries to inspire us, you know, this is his thing. He tries so hard to inspire us, to lift ourselves out of our self-pity. What Lama says is this, I'll tell you. Just a few sweet words, just giving us a taste, you know. It's amazing. Where is it? Okay, chapter 7, meditate on your mind. Page 53. Is that the one? No. Chapter 5, the benefits of samadhi are incredible. Let's try it. Get ourselves excited, okay? 39. So the reason we want single point of concentration, just by the way, is so we can get to the root of the problem and uproot the main delusion. But just talking about the experience of having this samadhi, you know. The benefits of samadhi are incredible. Samadhi means concentration, and it's what you accomplish when you get this term. Well, the term of the meditation, the name is called calm abiding. And that's the name for the result of a certain level of concentration, where you've gone beyond the grosser level of conceptuality and sensory. So so he says, when we understand this, when we realize how amazing the results are, we cannot help but try to develop it. There's no way we become lazy. We'll have much energy and make great effort. I will explain some of the benefits. So he says you go beyond the sensory. So as your concentration develops, you'll go beyond your body. Your mind will be non-conceptual, which is, we can't imagine that. All the chat has completely ceased. You haven't gone to sleep, on the other hand. You're brilliantly wide awake. So it becomes easy to cut all the crazy complex world of the five sense object, to eliminate all the delusions. In such a unified state, your mind becomes so subtle, so sharp, you can easily eradicate all the complex dualistic thoughts. You can touch reality. And then he says you experience bliss. This is hilarious to us. In the subtle state of concentration, you experience bliss, ecstatic bliss. Please hear these words, okay? just naturally. I mean, look at the effort we have to make to get some pleasure. Eat cake, have bodies, handbags, music, food. It's exhausting before you get some little moment of pleasure, which then goes, you know. Here, it's in your own potential, in your own mind. A friend of mine who's been a meditator seriously for years, I interviewed him 25 years ago in Mandela, our dear Swiss friend, Venerable Rene. I think he's from Geneva. Anyway, he's in an interview, I interviewed him years ago, and he said that even though he got to the 5th of the 9 stages of single point of concentration, I think he said something like this, that the joy, pleasure, whatever word you like, that his mind experienced was more powerful. They also say more peaceful, or more powerful, more joyful than any joy he had ever experienced through his senses. And the other quality, because attachment has ceased, temporarily anyway, it's very peaceful and radiant and calm, which is a very surprising experience for us. So in the beginning, the blissful experience is physical, which is the grossest level. But as your concentration deepens, as you throw off the layers of blankets of grosser consciousness, you experience bliss exclusively at the mental level. I mean, this is an entire topic, I tell you. We don't even know about mental pleasure. We just know about the sensory pleasure. We grasp at that, you know. We're trying to make our mental consciousness full of pleasure and joy, which comes from practicing virtue, not from eating cakes. So then Lama says, as your concentration gets stronger and you reach ever subtler levels, your mind becomes super powerful. From his own experience, Lama Tsongkhapa says that you can reach a point of such clarity in your meditation that your mind feels almost infinite. Your mind is so clear, so sharp, it's as if you can distinguish all the subtle physical energies. You'll have the courageous thought, I can count all the atoms of the universe. This level of mind is more powerful than even scientific instruments. I mean, this sounds so cosmic to us because we have no sense of the mind being like that, you know. This is when it's beyond conceptual, beyond sensory. But we live only at the conceptual level, don't we? And the sensory. This dominates our lives. We don't even posit other possibilities. Eventually, to get to this level, you've got to go through the process of calming down the grosser level. That's why purification practices have to play a role. You can't just leap into this experience. It's not possible. We're not subtle enough, you know, we're not purified enough. So the point about conceptual mind is we've got the sensory and we have the conceptual. Sensory is the eyes see shape and color. And then when anger's in the mind, that shape and color of your ex-boyfriend, the shape, there it is, just shape and color. It's all your eyes can see. But then instantaneously, you remember that's Fred. You remember he cheated on you. And what appears to your mind is anger. And then how that causes him to appear back to you is ugly. And that's what we believe he is. That's how it is. So anger is a conceptual state of mind that triggers intense physical feelings, that we know, but it's bare bones. It's a conceptual state of mind. Attachment is a conceptual state of mind. Jealousy is a conceptual state of mind that come along with these fierce physical energies because they're so habitual. And we totally believe the story they present to us. So what we have to find is discover even theoretically how they are inaccurate assessments. It's like that $50 in front of you, but because of attachment, you believe it's 500. So because of that anger, he appears more ugly than he really is. Because of attachment, she appears more divine than she really is. All the delusions embellish. And this is the reason they can be removed from your mind, because they're misconceptions. So listen to this. It's very simple. It's very simple. You know, I'm trying to learn maths and I say 1 + 1 is 3. You say, Robina, don't be silly. And you know it's not true. 1 + 1 is 2. And I go, oh, yeah, I just forgot. I'm sorry. So listen to this. This is a conventional reality called math, okay? We're talking conventional reality here, not ultimate. So, okay, we know according to the convention of math, 1 + 1 = 2. So that's a concept, and we all agree that's correct. It's a convention. So in my mind, at a previous moment, I had the thought in my mind, 1 + 1 is 3. Then you corrected me, and I was quickly able to see the truth of it. I then changed and said, you're right, 1 + 1 is 2. So my simple question is, there was in my mind a moment before a concept called 1 + 1 is 3. So what happened to it? What happened to it is very simple. It went away. It literally disappeared from my mind. It disappeared into a puff of smoke. And this is the point now. What made it go was my agreeing with the truth, reality. So attachment is a concept that exaggerates the deliciousness of the cake. And it's a story in my mind that I don't hear it say that, but it causes the cake to look more delicious because the habit is so strong. So once I know this and practice not believing in that story, slowly, slowly, I can remove that concept from my mind that it's more delicious than it really is, that it'll make me happy. These are misconceptions. So when you know it's a misconception, then you know you can change it. You can change your mind from stopping believing it, like the 1 + 1 is 3, to knowing the truth. And so by knowing the truth, we're talking conventional reality here, that makes the delusion disappear into a puff of smoke. That's how you can get enlightened. That's exactly how you get enlightened. So, of course, the subtlest misconception is the one that believes in the intrinsic me, is the one that believes in the concrete me, the real me from its own side. And to replace that misconception, to make that disappear out of your mind by seeing the truth, that's why you need samadhi. That's why you need single point of concentration, because we can't do it at a grosser level. Conceptuality is not strong enough. You've got to have concentration. And when you are in the subtle level of concentration, from masses of work before that, by thinking about dependent arising, by arguing with that misconception, one day the penny will drop. And you will see in your meditation for the first time that that fantasy I that you believed in since beginningless time never existed, doesn't exist, and could never exist. That it's a fantasy that never was 500 francs. It isn't 500 francs, and it can't be 500 francs. So this is the key thing to understand, that the painful emotions are rooted in being misconceptions. And you can argue with misconceptions with a valid concept, a valid conception. A valid conception is one that's in sync with truth. So if we've agreed that that's 50, then you have a thought that it's 50. The 50 and your mind seeing 50 come together. If there's a disconnect and there's a 50 there, but you see 500, then you're in trouble. And that's how we live in samsara. One thing is reality, and then we dump all this nonsense onto it. That's why we suffer. And this is all done at conceptual level. We've been doing it for eons, Buddha says. And we believe in it. That's the tragedy. Bad enough, as Lama Zopa says, that having these misconceptions causes the outside world to appear back to us wrongly. But the killer is we believe the wrong story. So at least when you see that cake and it looks delicious and you can't resist it and you're feeling the urge to put it in the mouth because you just believe what your projections are telling you, and you catch yourself and you say, Robina, don't believe in it. This puts an atomic bomb under your attachment, I tell you. Puts atomic bomb under the habit of attachment that drives us. So these practices put atomic bombs under these tendencies, under the tendency to act out the delusions with our body and speech, and then the tendency to have them of the mind to think it. That's the function of these practices, these purification. They're incredibly powerful, As Lama Zopa says, we're insane not to do the purification practice every day. So as we know, it's totally rooted in the teaching on karma. Of course it is. And it's just this gradual process, a psychological process with various steps, So the end of the day is a good time to do it. And given that everything you've done throughout the day and yesterday and the day before and the day before that and the lives before that have stayed in your mind, you've got to do some kind of pulling, you've got to weaken the tendencies, So the very first thing, you have to acknowledge that you did certain things, thought certain things, said certain things. If you can't acknowledge that you played the wrong note on the piano, you can't go further. There's nothing you can do. If you can't identify the problem, then you can't find a solution. So if you can't first acknowledge you did play the wrong note, just defending yourself, I didn't really, it's not my fault anyway, it's the piano's fault, the teacher's fault, you'll never be able to move forward. But you have to own, you have to be honest and own the mistake, because you're human, okay? It's all right. So I did kill, I did steal, I did cheat on my partner, I did badmouth my boyfriend, I did kick the dog, whatever you did. I mean, today, yesterday, this life, past life, whatever. And the first step in this practice, you settle down, you sit there, and you do this first one called regret. And it's this very powerful first step. It's acknowledging, owning, I did this and I did that. And then you regret it. And so this is the crucial thing. Regret isn't guilt. And we love guilt. Guilt is a complete misconception. Guilt goes, oh, I did that, I kicked the dog, and then it goes, and I'm a bad person. And so you just stay paralyzed and stuck and get more miserable. It's completely irrational. We have to consciously change that. So guilt, regret's the same. I did do it, but then you shift the second conclusion. Then you say, you know, I regret having done that. And then you got to say why, not guilt. Why? Because you know what, Robina? Everything I say and do and think leaves seeds in my mind. Do I want a seed in my mind that'll produce my future suffering? No, I don't. So therefore I regret it. Because why? Because I'm sick of suffering. It's like compassion for yourself. I don't want the suffering. It's like you've eaten the sugar or whatever. Oh my God, I regret having done that. Why? Because I don't want diabetes. So it's got to do with compassion for yourself. This first step is literally like compassion for yourself. It's ownership, it's responsibility, it's accountability. If we can't see our problems, how can we solve them? So this is here we're acknowledging behavior. First, it's behavior, what we've done with our body and speech, and in particular, what we've done to harm others, because that's the heaviest karma. They leave the deepest imprint in the mind. So we own responsibility. I did this, I did that. And then you think of some things in that life. And then, of course, you can think, well, I've done these 1,000 times before in countless lifetimes. So then you regret the lot. You say, and you know what? I regret whatever I have done with my body and speech since beginningless time. You know what, Robina? You're talking to yourself as you personally doing this practice. Don't think of it as religion. I regret this because I do not want future suffering. Because everything we think and do and say produces the person I become. So as we know, there are 4 ways our karma ripens for the Buddha. 1 is a type of rebirth. 2 is the tendency to keep doing it. 3 is an experience of having it done to you. And 4 is an environmental result. So if you're thinking about killing, the seeds you put in your mind don't just sit there static. They multiply, they grow energetically, get more and more powerful, more and more seeds, which produce more and more fruits. So, if it were killing, then the 4 results of killing would be a lower realm rebirth, would be the tendency to keep doing it, would be the experience of having it done to you, or be a real, having a suffering, sick body. Every action we ever do, good and bad, can have any of these 4 results. So if you look in the world, millions of 7 billion humans or 8 billion now, I have no idea. That means every one of those people got a human body, which is like a miracle at the end of their past life, and a virtuous action of killing, of non-killing was triggered at that time, and that programmed them to then go to their present mother's human womb a few weeks later. That's the fruit of virtue. But now look at most humans on the planet who've got a human body, which is the fruit of virtue, not killing. But look in terms of killing at the other 3 residual results. Most humans have the tendency to kill. Many humans get sick or die young. Sorry, get killed or die young. That's the first. So they've got the human rebirth, which is a good result. But in terms of the other 3, they've got the tendency to keep killing. They have experience of being killed or dying young. And they have environmental result, which is being sick, and whatever you eat or drink or the pollution already causes you to have a lot of suffering and sickness. Look at the millions of people on the planet. That's what we call suffering. What else do we call suffering on this planet? Is when bad things happen, isn't it? So you take the action of lying. Many people have a tendency to lie. Many people get lied to or not believed. And many people, they all have their environmental result, like fruit. Things don't grow properly at the wrong time, the imbalance of all the elements. All of these are the karmic result of different actions we've done in the past. And this is the suffering of the human beings. Look at COVID. COVID is the environmental result of collective past killing of the whole human planet, countless lives ago. So we've got to purify all these aspects. And this is why purification and living in vows are the only answer, because you put the tendency so strong. So what happens is, here all those humans who've got a human birth now but have the residual result of killing, being killed, etc., is because they haven't purified all aspects of those tendencies. They cleared up the fully ripened result by being in the lower realms in the past, and they got a human body again. But because they didn't vow never to kill, they didn't purify their killing tendency, then they got the results in this life of the tendency to keep killing, the experience of being killed, and the environmental result of being killed. That's the tragedy. So if we live in vows, just every second of the day, 24 hours a day, your vow to not kill is kicking over virtuous karmic imprints 24 hours a day. And then you do your purification at the end of the day and you regret the killing and so on and so forth. That put atomic bombs under all the past, cleans up the past karma and puts atomic bombs under the tendency. We can't get ahead of the game, you know, by not, without living. We can't get ahead unless we live in vows and purify. As Lama Zopa says, just being good is not enough. You know, they're very powerful psychologically. So the first level is you regret having killed, then or whatever you want to regret. Then you think, well, then the result of regret is, well, whom can I turn to? Where's the doctor? Who can give me the methods I can use to clean up, you know? So we turn to the Buddha. That's our doctor here. So, of course, we all perhaps know the practice where we visualize a certain aspect of the Buddha from Vajrayana called Vajrasattva, particular aspect of the Buddha. Visualize above our crown. And the second part of the second step, there's two parts. It's called reliance, but there are two parts. First part is reliance upon the Buddha, like delighting that we've got a decent doctor, taking refuge. And the second part is reliance insofar as we now have compassion for others. The first one, the regret, is like compassion for yourself. You regret for your own sake. So now the second step, you regret for the sake of others. You have compassion for the sentient beings you've harmed, not just this life, but countless lives, you know. Then if you're brave enough, you can have compassion for those who've harmed you. And why would you do that? Because they are going to suffer unbearably as a result of their actions of harming you, you know. That's why if you have regret and you realize that you suffer in the future because of your actions, that is the basis for you having compassion for others who harm, because they will suffer in the future as a result of their actions. If you don't get that first with regret, compassion for yourself, you can't have compassion for sentient beings. You see, we're all in the same boat, harming and being harmed and not realizing that we are the cause. This is the tragedy. And of course, not realizing we're the cause of our happiness as well. So then you're a refuge and you have compassion. The third one is the remedy. You now do the practice. You visualize. It's all your mind. You're visualizing Buddha there, but Buddha's not doing the work. You are. You are purifying. You merely visualize Buddha sending nectar and you imagine your mind being purified. You imagine all the yuck going out and all those little visualizations you do. It's very delicious. And then you say these powerful Sanskrit sounds. They're said to be very powerful sounds, the mantras. And then the fourth one is you resolve, you determine not to do again. So this is the purification practice. So powerful. End of the day, every day you feel, and you go to bed with a happy mind, as Lama Yeshe says. Such a brief blah blah. So now you ask me some questions, please.
Please feel free to raise the hand or write in the chat. Any question is welcome.
Any questions at all? Any old thing you want to bring up? Don't mind.
I got one, Venerable.
Good, last one.
Good. When and how would you know that something has effectively been purified, such as me in the past, this life, having killed an ant?
Sorry. So start again, last. What's the question? Just
how and when would I know effectively that something has been purified?
When you realize emptiness. When you realize emptiness. when you
Right.
realize emptiness.
So I would.
The purification practice is putting atomic bombs under the habits, is making space so you can grow more virtues, weakening the tendencies, weakening the experiential results, weakening the environmental results, weakening the results of lower realm rebirth. You're weakening them, lessening them. And when you've got them less and weaker, you can grow more virtue and grow more flowers. And that makes them even more weak. But they will never disappear forever until you realize emptiness. Okay. What else, people? Then you cut the root of the root delusion, and you can't create more negative after that. It's not possible because you no longer believe in the intrinsic I, and you're no longer duped by the delusions. What else, people? Any old point. I don't mind. Any old thing. Yes. Who?
Elisa.
Elisa, you want to speak to me?
Yes, thank you.
Okay, sweetheart, talk to me.
I have a question. How important is it to do your purification meditation in your on your meditation cushion versus somewhere else?
I understand, darling. It's a good point. I mean, this is a formal way to do the meditation at the end of the day. It's a nice way psychologically to finish your day. But actually, in reality, you should be doing it every second. You know, it's sort of like if you're playing the piano. Well, you totally disappeared. Oh, there you are. So let's say you're playing the piano and you notice at that moment you just played the wrong note. You don't wait till the end of the day to do the regret and to fix it. You fix it right there. You grab yourself right there. So if you can say, let's say, you know, that person next to you maybe is your boy in your life. I don't know. He looks like a boy in your life. But let's just say you shoot your mouth off at him. You don't wait till the end of the day to fix it. You can fix it right. Oh my God, Elisa, what have I just done? I regret having done that. I don't want to be more angry. Then you have compassion for him, and then you vow not to do it again. All in 1 second, you just do it right there. It's very powerful. Do you understand?
Yes.
Elisa?
Yes.
Then the
Thank
formal
you.
practice, so you can go into more depth and then meditate a bit more in the evening is very nice. Do you understand?
Yes, I understand.
Good, darling. Well done. Okay, go on, people. Talk to me. Any other questions? Any old point? I said that a bit fast, Elisa. I'm sorry. You did get me, though. Elisa?
Yes, I did get you,
Well
but
done, girl.
I was still thinking because sometimes in the evening I have a little child, and when I bring her to bed,
Okay,
I
sure.
use the time to, instead of do it in my meditation room,
Oh,
I
I see.
use.
No, I know. Well, you do what you can. Then you do what you can. If the ideal scenario is to do a nice meditation in the evening, if we can't, darling, you just have to be practical and flexible. But when you understand the principle of the practice psychologically, then you apply it in your best way that you can. While you're on the toilet, you know, when you just got 3 minutes of peace and quiet, you use that opportunity. That's really sensible. You do what you can, darling. Do you understand?
Okay. Yes.
Good.
Thank you.
Good. What else?
Venerable.
Yes. Yes,
Um,
Lou.
yeah. The other day I broke my vows, my killing, and I saw a spider. I'm scared of spiders, and I look at the spider and I thought, I'm gonna break my vow. I'm gonna kill the spider, and I tried to kill. Luckily, the spider was quicker and then ran away and went somewhere underneath something, and I feel really bad. But it's very confusing because I felt bad. I was glad that the spider escaped, but I thought to myself, I'm scared if the spider come again from under that furniture, I'm gonna kill again. So I don't know. Um,
What's your question? What's the
the
question,
question, the question is, I sort of did a purification, but I'm not sure if that worked because I'm still
Okay,
scared.
no, it's not. Don't be superstitious about it, sweetheart. Just look at your mind, okay? So you'd rather not kill, wouldn't you? That's your
Yes,
weakness. So then you've got a bit of a fear of spiders, so you panicked and you thought, oh my God, I must kill it. But in general, you don't want to kill, do you?
no,
And in
but I
general,
had
you'd rather not kill.
spider because it was in
General,
my way.
no, listen. And in general, you'd rather not kill, yeah? Well, that's a
Yeah,
pretty powerful tendency to have. And you've got a vow not to kill, right?
yeah.
Okay, good, darling. So just having what you've got to remember is that 24 hours a day, Buddha says the power of vows psychologically is such that even when you're not thinking of killing, not killing. You're purifying not killing every single second by having that vow. So be happy that you've got the vow and that you're keeping it all the time, because it actually does protect you. So then what happens is you meet the spider and you panic because you know that's your old habit. So then you suddenly thought, I'd kill, and you tried even, but the lucky spider got away. But you still created some karma there. So don't get panic stricken. Don't have superstition. You simply then purify. Notice your mind. Observe your fear. Observe the tendency was there that you wished you could kill. And you simply purify it, darling, by vowing, you know, it wasn't a complete action. The spider didn't die. So you purify it by thinking, I do regret that because I don't want that kind of suffering. And I do have compassion for the spider, and I'll do my best not to do it again. And don't be superstitious. Just move, but be realistic with your own mind. Move forward, but in general, be very delighted that you've got these vows. Vows are very hidden. We don't notice it. But the Buddha, I mean, Lama Zopa says the difference between a person having a vow and not having a vow is unbelievable. We don't notice it. So if you know, a person, okay, you've heard me say this many times, but what we need in our mind more than anything is bucket loads of really delicious, non-killing, non-stealing, non-harming karmic seeds, because they will ripen as our future happiness. This is purely for our own benefit. We're not discussing compassion yet. So in order to get good future of this life and the future, you need to sow the seeds of non-harming. So the only time you will sow a seed of non-killing without a vow is when you see the little ant and you decide, I will not kill it. But that's the only time. Whereas if you have a vow not to kill 24 hours a day that you are keeping it, because it's so powerful psychologically, you are purifying your mind of that, of killing all the time. So we don't notice it, but be happy about that. Are you seeing what I'm saying, Lou? So delight in that aspect, see your mind, notice your fear, do your best to regret it and purify, and you know, and also that prevents these types of things from happening again. So do your best, okay? Are you understanding me?
Yes.
Be
Thank
down
you.
to earth about it. Don't be superstitious. That's not helpful. Don't be guilty. That doesn't help. Do you understand, darling?
Yes, thank you.
Good, sweetheart. What else, people? Carol, you want to say something? No? Looks like you're about to talk. No. Yes, you, Carol. No?
Thank you.
Go,
Thank
sweetheart.
you. Yeah, my mind's so, yeah. Okay, can you talk about dedicating the merit and the power of dedicating the merit?
I know that the Lamas talk a lot about this, you know, and I think somehow it's really important. I don't know how to think about it. It sounds so strange initially, you know. I mean, use a simple example. Okay. There you are growing a garden. So a garden is full of vegetables and flowers, right? And you know that you're like using the analogy of doing things for other people. So you know that you're going to get the benefit of those vegetables and you're going to really enjoy those vegetables. So if you don't at the end of your gardening session, remember, okay, Carol, why have I done this? Why am I growing all these vegetables? So that I can give them away when they grow. But if you get so attached to your veggies and attached to your fruits, you'll forget sentient beings. So the same with our virtue. We will get the benefit. Every single second you keep your vows and do good things, we need to rejoice. We need to be happy for ourselves. You need to be glad you've done a day of gardening, but we can forget others. So by thinking at the end, and I'm going to give all the fruits away when they grow, that's dedicating. It makes it very powerful that you don't just think of yourself, that you also think of others. That's the point about it. That's, I think, is like that. You dedicate it, and that keeps it very powerful in the mind. And it's all just intellectual, it's all the mind, but that's what causes it to become more powerful for you. It's not just for you. You're doing it for others. And that's a stupendously powerful concept. Be delighted you've grown all those seeds, happy for them because you'll get the benefit, but offer it all to others, give it all away. That's why you're growing it. When all the veggies come, you're going to give them away. Do you understand?
Thank you so much.
When you become a Buddha, as a result of all this virtue, you're there. Why is so you can help others. That's the point. So it becomes the cause for you to get that result, you know. Do you understand, darling?
Yes, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hello, Alona, yes.
Hi, Minerva.
Hello,
It's nice
sweetheart.
to see you.
Yes.
I have a question about samadhi. I've heard and I've read and I've listened, and it's hard to taste that subtle mind. I would really like to. Is it possible for me, who is, living in, married and job and all this, develop
I
that?
understand. I think if we really look at all the qualifications for a person to accomplish it in this life, the normal scenario that's taught, the normal situation is that there are a whole series of conditions that are necessary in order to get it. One is, well, just forget the internal. Massive internal alone, forget that. But just external, you need to have a very specific type of physical environment that is completely separate from the rest of the world, completely separate from sounds and normal activity, and where you have to be able to have, we're completely self-contained, whether either your food is provided to you, because you have to be undistracted. You have to, the external world is so powerful for most of us that if you have to stop even if you have to stop every day and make your food or go shopping, it's almost impossible. You have to have really ideal condition so that you can totally focus 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 15 hours a day on doing your sessions. This is external conditions. And without the external conditions, even with external conditions, most people aren't internally qualified. You can find those external conditions quite easily, but if you're not internally qualified, which means masses of virtue, living in vows, giving up attachment, no interest in food, sex, drugs, mortgages, rocks and rolls and husbands, and you cannot possibly do it as a normal person in ordinary daily life. The only person who can do it in ordinary daily life is a person who's already come into this life with realizations from past. You understand? It's like technically not. It's like, in other words, you're asking me, can I spend 8, 10 hours a day for 10 years, 20 years practicing tennis so I can become like Roger Federer while I'm being an ordinary wife and mother and having a job? Literally, it's not a moral issue. It's a literal issue. It's just not possible. You have to sacrifice. If you want to become like Federer, you've got to absolutely give up everything else and 100% focus. Everything else. Have a team, have the money, have the body, have the place, the coaches, 100% commitment. And then for 10 years, 20 years, 8, 10, 12 hours a day, then you become like Federer. It's exactly like that. You need certain conditions. So if you're that brilliant, and if you've done so much tennis in the past, and you can just do it naturally now, then fine. But very rarely are we like that. But doesn't mean you can't practice it alone. Do you understand?
Yes, yes.
Or, if it's beneficial for you, you've got all the right conditions, and maybe you aspire one day to have the conditions, and you have like this, you have this thought, may I, if it is beneficial, may I find all the right conditions to be able to get single point of concentration? And then one day, if you have to leave your husband and kids and jobs, then you'll do it. If it's right, if it's beneficial. Do you understand?
Yes.
Or next life, doesn't matter, whichever one. But have the aspiration, put the seed in the mind, put the wish in the mind. That's powerful.
I pray for it every day. So.
Yeah, that's right. Right, darling. Well done.
Thank you.
So listen, we have 1 hour and it's now finished. So what do you want me to do now?
I would like you to lead a short Bodhisattva practice for us, please, if that's possible.
And then you mentioned we have to do the verses, the chanting, and that's 30 minutes already.
Yeah, but I just thought that Tara was going to read that, if unless you want to do it, of course.
What do you mean Tara's going to read it?
Tara is going to read the chanting verses for us, and people would stay. And when you leave, Tara will be reading.
I see. No, I can certainly read some of those. I can certainly read some of the verses. We can do some of the verses together.
All right,
I can certainly
excellent.
do that. But I don't think I want to lead a practice. I think we've already done it. In a sense, I think we've done it by listening to the teachings. I think if you understand, I'm not trying to cut you short. I'd rather do the verses. I'd rather do the Manjushri names, actually, because that's keeping His Holiness's request, doing His Holiness's wishes, and it's putting the imprints in the mind to have Lama Zopa come back. I think that talking about it and talking about the pure nature of our mind, having some courage, I think that's enough, perhaps. I don't know, Lars. What do you think?
I think that's a really wonderful idea.
Okay, so why don't we
And
start with those chanting the names, and people who'd like to stay, don't feel guilty if you don't want to stay. It's chanting these different verses. What the background to this for the people, if you don't know, is a couple of months ago, Venerable Roger, Rinpoche's main attendant, requested the Dalai Lama any news about Lama Zopa Rinpoche's reincarnation. And he basically said to do this particular practice, reciting these names. They call it chanting the names of Manjushri. It seems rather esoteric. It seems hard to quite understand it, but to do that for 6 months and then check again. And so we're trying to make an effort, the different centers and the individual students, to chant these names as a cause for Lama Zopa Rinpoche to come back. So I think I'd like to do that. And if anybody would like to stay there and just relax and listen or meditate on the meaning, or you can go, you don't feel compelled at all. So what we'll do is now we'll dedicate this little hour, and you go if you feel like it, you stay if you want to. We just dedicate, thinking we've been this 1 hour, all these seeds we planted, listening, thinking, analyzing, and please go away with this encouragement that we have marvelous potential, sweethearts, that our delusions are very loud and shouting, but they do not define us. They are not at the core of our being. So Lou, for example, remembering the fact that you're living in vows, but you forgot the benefit of that. You'd be rejoicing if you really realized that. Instead, you just have guilt and shame, like we all tend to have. So don't over-exaggerate our neuroses. Don't dismiss them, but really delight in our virtue, delight in our goodness, and delight in our marvelous potential. Please finish with that thought. Jangchub, Semchog, Rinpoche, Ma Ke Panam, Teguchi, Ke Panyampa, Me Payang, Gongne, Gongdu, Phobashog.